10. James Franklin covers, doesn't just win, covers 60% of the time. He's really, really good in this situation. West Virginia would have to buck the trend.
Yeah, and Drew Aller was really good in this spot last year. 325 yards, four touchdowns against this West Virginia defense. West Virginia's defense has got to be much improved. Garrett Green, good quarterback, though, dual threat.
170 more yards by Penn State in that win last year than West Virginia. We'll see if Garrett Green can close the gap this year. Big one in that early 11 o'clock window, Clemson in Georgia in Atlanta. You don't know all the names yet for Georgia, but people just expect them to come in and be good.
Lance, tell me why this line has dropped. It's been hovering around 13 for quite a while. This morning, mybookie.ag, Georgia's an 11.5-point favorite. Why would this have dropped?
Well, so
that's dropped a full point since I looked at it earlier this morning.
You know, one of your main two backs, you lose your two best backs from last year, your two top rushers. So Robinson's out. You've got Trevor Etienne. Like, has Kirby confirmed he's playing or not?
He is not, and that's probably
you think
why.
That's it?
I think
they're just thin at running back?
Yeah, so you would have a walk-on true freshman, and I forgot who the other kid is, but three new faces in that backfield. I think that's why it's dropped. And let's not forget, Clemson started 4-4 last year. They win 5 consecutive games to end with 9 wins. First time they haven't had 10 wins since 2010. Credit to Dabo Swinney there. But this defense is going to be really good. These are 2 top 10 defenses right here. And one little fact from this game, there are only, for the first time since 1942, the fewest active coaches with national championships. There's only 3 right now in the FBS.
2 of them in this game.
2 of them in this game, and who's the other?
We always forget him, Mac Brown.
Yep, saw him last night. He looked like he had just gotten up from a nap.
He looked like he won the championship at 42.
Right.
Also in that early morning window, you get Chattanooga and Tennessee. Chattanooga's a pretty good little FCS team. Tennessee should have no problem. Nico's what we're watching. In the 1 o'clock game on ESPN Plus, streaming only, 15-0 defending back-to-back national champion South Dakota State, Oklahoma State. They're in Stillwater. Any concern? We had concerned about Colorado surviving North Dakota State. Any concern about Oklahoma State surviving South Dakota State?
I don't think so. I just don't think they're going to sneak up because they do have that number 1 next to them, and Oklahoma State's been in this situation. They've lost to Central Michigan. They've lost to a South Alabama at home. And if you're Gundy with the expectation this year college football playoff or bust, it's a game you can't lose, and especially with the fact you didn't suspend Ollie Gordon, and you said at Big 12 Media Days, his punishment was going to be running the ball 40 times.
Let me, since you group those two together, let me just put in perspective the level of opponent that Oklahoma State is playing here. Today at mybookie.ag, Tennessee's a 38.5-point favorite over Chattanooga.
Right.
Oklahoma State's a 10-point favorite over South Dakota State. Yeah. This is a far better FCS team that they're playing.
Up from 9.5, and I promise you, I looked at about 8 o'clock Central. So in the last hour and 54 minutes, Georgia's dropped a point to where it's from 12.5 to an 11.5, and that was... What is it now?
It's at 10, right
10,
at 10.
It was 9.5 this morning.
Yeah, so up half a point.
Yeah, up half a point there. 2:30, middle window. Miami of Florida and Florida in Gainesville. SEC Nation will be there. It's on ABC as you watch the game. And the more and more I look at this should almost be a pick 'em to me.
Well, it's 2.5. It is not a pick 'em, but it has hovered kind of around that all summer. Florida, a 2.5-point home dog.
Do wonder with the ACC struggling early if that will affect this number and the way people play this game. Florida 11-14 under Billy Napier.
You never know what we're up to here at the next round. The easiest way to stay in the know with our antics and adventures is to follow the next round across all social media platforms at Next Round Live on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Whether it's Dunaway sleeping in the studio, Tim and Lunsford breaking down the latest movie release, or Game Day Chronicles, we are here to keep you updated on the latest sports news while, of course, having just a little bit of fun. Follow at Next Round Live across all platforms to join in.
When on YouTube, you constantly hear requests to please like and subscribe. Well, here at Disrupt Media, we aren't going to play that game. Those demands are frankly outdated. So we just want you to hit like or subscribe. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure novel. Pick a path, hit like, or hit subscribe. It's your call. We don't care which, just pick one. Or go to Roll Tide Pods and do it. Or War Damn Pods. Or the Disrupt Media YouTube channel. Or The Meltdown. Just make a decision and stick with it. Like or subscribe, the choice is yours.
Follow John Lunsford on Twitter at JLuntz.
All right, the alarm's going off early on a Monday, on a Labor Day, but it's a holiday because football season rolls on. No 2-minute warning. Don't hit the snooze. And don't call it a 2-minute warning. It's a 2-minute timeout. Somebody's getting mad when I call it a 2-minute warning. I don't understand that. It's what we call it in the NFL. I'm here every Monday morning with you, but you don't come to hear my thoughts on football. You come for the expert. That is the man, Tom Luginbill from ESPN, back with us on Monday Morning Live for year 2. Lugs, what a weekend we have seen. Week 0 was good. Week 1 was better, and it went good last night. We'll get to Alabama. We'll get to Auburn. We'll get to the rest of the SEC. But, man, let's start with the last thing we saw, USC and LSU. Is it possible, bear with me here, possible that both these teams are better than they were last year, even though LSU lost the game? Is it possible both these teams are better than they were last year?
I think it's absolutely possible that both teams are better than they were last year. And good morning, Jim. It's good to be back with you, man. I think the number one thing that stood out to me in this football game, and this can probably be applied to LSU to some degree based off of last year, but based off of Lincoln Riley's history as a football coach, as a head coach in a Power 5 program, this is the first time we saw them play any semblance of organized defense. And they looked good in doing it. They were lined up correctly. They played hard. They limited explosive plays, which is not easy to do against a team like LSU. They just looked like they had some form of a plan. And that has been completely lacking at SC over the last couple of years. I thought the quarterback play was outstanding on behalf of both teams. But if this Lincoln Riley coached offense finally has a defense that doesn't have to be lights out, just has to be competent, then they are way further ahead of the curve than I thought going into the season that they would be, because I've kind of always taken a, well, until they prove it approach on that side of the ball. And really the difference in the game, at the end of the day, the difference in the game, LSU turned it over, had 10 penalties for 99 yards. And, I mean, that was – the two teams were almost equal across the board, and LSU made more mistakes than SC did.
They 100% did. We appreciate all of you jumping up early with us. We'll continue the conversation there. The chat room is open, so we'll roll through those. Thomas checks in early today from Wisconsin. Bob appreciates us getting up and doing the show. Brett's out in Las Vegas today. Shane is up in Tennessee. Man, we'll get to your quarterback coming up here in just a second. So as we get rolling, Lincoln Riley with a defense is scary. I think I saw the stat last night. He'd lost 8 of his last 10 versus the top 15, and usually those have come in the playoffs sometimes. So here we go. A pretty good LSU team, and USC makes a statement. And I guess nothing but rave reviews for D'Anton Lynn, who came from UCLA, crossed town to the rival USC, and the fingerprint on that defense was obvious. Did they change personnel that much, or was it just an attitude, a scheme, and maybe restructuring their bodies a little bit?
Well, obviously that was documented last night in terms of the commitment in the weight room and the conditioning and the nutrition of what they want their athletes to be. Eric Gentry has been there as a transfer from Arizona State. Obviously, Bear Alexander alongside the front. They actually lost Romello Height to Georgia Tech. But there's some new pieces. But for me, it's more about structure. You know, I had the SC UCLA game last year with D'Anton Lynn as the defensive coordinator of the Bruins. And, you know, SC doesn't have a Leatu Latu, right? But it was very clear the way that defense was structured, they were going to be sound. They were going to limit mistakes, limit explosives, create some havoc. You know, 2 tackles for loss for Eric Gentry, some plays made on LSU's side of the line of scrimmage. Now, I thought that LSU ran the football better than SC did last night. I mean, SC only had 22 rushing attempts for, under 80 yards, so not a big day on the ground outside of the final one to Woody Marks to seal the deal. But for me, you know, I feel like in today's college football landscape, let's just say to be considered for a college football playoff spot, or, you know, prior to the 12-team playoff, a New Year's Six Bowl, if you weren't going to make it to the playoffs, is you didn't have to be an elite defensive football team. You just had to be a good enough defensive football team to be in the mix. Now, to beat a Georgia or to beat an Ohio State or an Alabama in years past, yeah, you better be legitimate and you better be potentially outstanding on that side of the ball, particularly up front. And that's what separated, for example, a Georgia or an Alabama and Ohio State over the course of time, Clemson during this time, over a Lincoln Riley-led Oklahoma team, and the reason why they couldn't win a college football playoff semifinal. So if that part looks like the gap's starting to close, this may be an entirely different SC team, because the schedule, Jim, for SC, this game looked like a daunting one, and it was. Well, the rest of the schedule for the Trojans doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Big Ten now, it makes their schedule difficult. Notre Dame had a big win over the weekend. They meet at the end of the year. Playoffs could be on the line, or both teams could be locked into the playoffs by then. I don't know. We'll talk more about those high-profile SEC games coming up in a moment. One observation, though, in this game, before we move on from it, was the two quarterbacks. A very unique situation. Both of them replacing Heisman Trophy winners. Miller Moss, that last his touchdown pass, and then that last pass to get him down there in field goal range before they punched it in for the 27-20 win was unbelievable. He dropped it in a hole there. And then I didn't think Nussmeier was bad either. The problem with Nussmeier is they got lulled into throwing underneath a lot, didn't they? They didn't have your typical LSU explosive plays that I've seen in the past. They didn't really try to take the top off as much. They were throwing a lot of underneath easy throws. Both quarterbacks put up big numbers, as Landmine Believer and and Richard are saying in the chat room, big numbers, but this game didn't come anywhere close to going over the total in Vegas. So there were a lot of between the 20 stuff going on.
Yeah, listen, I think Vegas went into this one with the mindset that it might be similar to what mine was. Prove it to me first on defense, and then I'll believe this isn't going to be a 53-49 game, right? Because when you look at the offensive firepower for both of these teams going in, you could say that could very easily happen. But with the improvement on both sides of the ball defensively, obviously that changed the makeup of the game. I thought the quarterbacks put on a clinic, both of them, Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier, put on a clinic of efficiency. And, you reference Garrett Nussmeier. Well, LSU's average yards per pass attempt was only 8 yards. SC's was 10.5.
Right.
So to further your point, taking what the defense gives you, and not necessarily that they needed to take a bunch of shots, but I think SC's approach was one that they hadn't had before. Well, we're not just going to let the ball sail over the top of us like we have each of the last 3 years. We have got to force LSU to earn everything they get. And I thought SC accomplished that task on defense. I thought they did a really good job in that area. But I look at these two quarterbacks, and, it's interesting, the common denominator between the two of them matches who is arguably the best quarterback in college football right now, and that's Carson Beck at Georgia. And what do all three have in common? They didn't leave their program. They stayed, they matured, they developed, they waited their time. They were happy with where they were. They wanted to be a Georgia Bulldog or a USC Trojan in the case of Miller Moss, who's a Southern California guy. Caleb Williams comes in, he doesn't just walk out the door. I think there's a lot that can be said for that. Yeah. And I think there's leadership traits that are inherent in that. There is a love and a commitment and a devotion to the program. There's a care, good and bad. Whereas sometimes in this transfer portal era where we're hiring mercenaries, that if things don't go well, where do they stand? For example, tonight we're going to have Florida State. What if Florida State goes out and doesn't play well again for 2 weeks in a row? What's the commitment of all those guys they brought in to ensuring the health of the program and the pride and the care of Florida State football? Because that can happen. It can happen. So I applaud both of these quarterbacks for the path they've taken.
Great point by you, Tom Luginbill of ESPN, ACC Network primetime game analyst there. It is interesting time. Brett in the chat room brings this up. It's back-to-back years now, if I remember correctly, where Brian Kelly in LSU comes out, has a great drive, gets down into a fourth down situation, and then instead of taking a give me 3 points, back-to-back years, he chooses to go for it more than fourth and a yard, down on the goal line, and both times he's turned away. I love being aggressive, But, man, in tight games, 3 points is so valuable. Johnny Manziel used to do this all the time. He wanted the money. 3 points is money sometimes in these games.
Well, especially when they're close. That's the difference in the ball game. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball of how the thing was going to play out. But you're right. You almost kind of get the sense that, okay, how many times are we going to do this before we just take some points, go put our defense on the field, potentially get a stop, and get the offense back and be ahead. I see it both ways. I really do. There's a part of me that loves the aggressiveness where you place the trust and the faith in your offensive football team because they are good enough on offense. I mean, this is arguably on paper the most collective group of maybe NFL draft picks on any team in America in the offensive line. And so I get that part of it too. But, it's always easy to sit here as we do on Monday and truly be an under our Monday morning quarterback.
MyBookie.ag in the chat room there, but they also bring you the entire show, MyBookie.ag. Promo code Next Round is the title sponsor of Monday Morning Live all season long, and we appreciate them so much. Promo code Next Round, again, gets you right now double your initial deposit. You can jump on there and enjoy playing the games all weekend. I finally broke my 0-7 start with a nice little parlay on Saturday to get things going finally for this season. Maybe you were on Vanderbilt. We'll talk about their big upset of Virginia Tech coming up, but MyBookie is there for you to play all the games, the NFL 2, which starts later this week. So the TNR chat room and, of course, this show brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. Use the code NEXTROUND for a first-time deposit bonus. Thank you to MyBookie, MyBookie.ag. We'll get to all the other big games going on around the country. Let's circle in, though, to Alabama and Auburn and then some other SEC games that happened. We'll start with the changing of the head coach in Tuscaloosa, Kalen DeBoer's first game. It's not a contest, 63-0, the final score there. Hard in a lot of these SEC games to take anything away, Lugs, from what you saw. But your initial thought on Alabama against Western Kentucky there with a new look offense, a new coaching staff, and all of that, just a big takeaway from you on what you saw with Alabama.
Exactly what I expected. I think whether it's the Texas game in Colorado State, whether it's Auburn and Alabama A&M, whether it's Alabama and Western Kentucky, and don't kid yourself, it was blowout city across the landscape of college football this weekend. It really was, outside of a handful of games. But the only thing that you wanted to not do is come out flat and come out kind of stuttering and mumbling along, and you can't get into rhythm. And you look, I remember last year early, all the criticism of Alabama a year ago early, particularly in that first 4 to 5 weeks, was the offensive line play, right? Well, I thought that Alabama came out. They were explosive. They had urgency. I liked Jalen Milroe's tempo and the fact that he looked a little bit more comfortable in the short and intermediate stuff. We know his strength is in the vertical passing game, which is the strength of Kalen DeBoer's offense and what they always want to have a presence in. Ryan Williams is the next Amari Cooper, in my opinion. I think he's special. Defensively, they're really good up front in the front seven. Where I think they are going to potentially be really, really good is when those young guys on the back end grow up.
Yeah.
There are some corners and some safety players, young guys that are really, really talented, that are going to add really functional and competitive depth and be, I think, one-time all-conference potential All-American type players. They're just young, and that's fine. They're going to be able to protect those guys early because they're so good up front. But I just thought Alabama did exactly what I expected them to do. Kalen DeBoer's team looked exactly the way I thought that it would, because I think there's enough proof in the pudding there to look at his history and where he's been and how his teams have performed to believe that it would have been odd to see anything else, in my opinion.
We will learn more about Caden Proctor hopefully today, the big left tackle, injured. He was warming up and he left the field. I don't know if it was a pre-existing injury and he was trying to just go, or if he actually injured it during warm-ups, but it was a upper body injury to one of his arms. He was in a sling. Evaluations were going to happen. So it was a situation where he was out of the game and they had to flip right tackle, left tackle, move those guys around. Pritchett and Formby were going to rotate at right tackle. They ended up, Bob, moving Pritchett over to the left, Formby at the right. So if you want to just go glass half full in this situation, if it's not a serious injury to Proctor, it gave those two guys a lot of rep at tackle as they battle at right tackle. We'll see how that plays out. News conference 12 noon today live here on the Next Round platform right after our show as we go overtime today. So, Lugs, you mentioned the front seven for Alabama. I thought Jihad Campbell, this new offense looks perfect for him. Q Russaw off the edge. I was worried about the edge, and I was worried, other than Deontay and Campbell in the middle, I was worried about these linebackers. But they ended up showing they had a little edge presence. And I sort of was lulled into believing the 4-2-5 swarm wasn't going to be as aggressive as it looked. I walked away. I went in expecting to be like, man, I really miss Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and Jeremy Pruitt's kind of defense. I walked out saying, okay, I may like this. I may like just a little bit of freedom of letting the dogs eat, let them get out there and play. What do you think of just the scheme of Kane Womack and the 4-2-5 swarm?
So I think when Coach Womack's defense, when you look at the structure of it, what's going to look different for Alabama potentially going forward is those guys, those back five, two of them need to be a presence near the line of scrimmage, right? They're a hybrid type of nickel linebacker that are big enough to hold up, that can be utilized in pressure packages. But when you run that thing, you can give so many varying different looks because of where people are going to line up. And you've got to identify, well, are we counting him as a linebacker or are we counting him as a safety? Are we counting him as a nickel or are they just in base personnel? And I just think from a pass protection standpoint, you can really crowd the line of scrimmage and walk up into the gaps and create some looks to try to create some confusion for the defense, for the offense, particularly in the offensive line and at the quarterback position. I think it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to require a bit of a different type of athlete in the sense that if you remember, when Alabama was building that defense under Nick Saban, and you're sitting there with linebackers that are 6'3", 6'4", 250, 260 type guys, that's a whole different model than what we're looking at here.
Yeah, absolutely. Speed was on display, as Steven says, including Jefferson showing off the speed, flying around out there. They did look fast. You lose Caleb Downs, as they're pointing out in the chat, and you bring in Keon Sabb. He comes from a great program. He had 2 interceptions in the game. The word I keep hearing is he's in a position that allows him to use his eyes and just read the quarterback more than he would have been in the Saban, Kirby Smart type tree. Explain that to me a little bit. Is that true, not true? And why can he have that kind of success on a week in and week out basis? He's not going to get 2 picks every game. He's not going to have, when it's all said and done, 32 interceptions this year. But why could he thrive in this defense?
Well, in the previous scheme, and I'm sure you've heard this language before, the whole rip Liz pattern matching type of stuff. That's a completely different animal than what we would be talking here with Sabb in relationship to what his assignments and his keys would be if he's in a center field position or if he's in a split hash position to pedal, keep the ball in front of you and just key the quarterback and react, right?
Right.
And I think that it allows him more freedom to utilize instincts, not have it be so much about, key in receiver number 2 and number 3, and if you get a vertical release, I do this and this guy does that. And I just think it's less jargon, less complicated than that, and probably allows a guy like Sabb to play freely and to kind of just key on getting a jump on the ball or getting a jump on a route. And you're right, it's not going to happen each and every week, but within the structure of the defense, I just think it allows more freedom on the defensive back end.
Down at Auburn, I've never seen it, and I've done this a long time. I assume it happens occasionally. Running clock in the second half, shortened quarters. I mean, we get it down.
Where did they determine that?
Apparently, it was discussed pre-game or day before the game. So Alabama A&M sort of knew what was coming, I guess. 73-3 in what basically ends up being a shortened game. You go to Jordan-Hare Stadium as Auburn gets the win. And you go there, you want to see what our friends at thebarnauburn.com, go check that out, by the way, thebarnauburn.com, labeled the Freeze 4, those 4 receivers that came in the Hugh Freeze recruiting class. And they didn't disappoint. But before we talk about the receivers, having toys to throw to, players to throw to, made Peyton Thorne look a lot more comfortable to me. I thought Thorne looked really good.
Year 2 in the offense, Hugh Freeze calling the offense, improved personnel. There's nowhere to go but up, right? Now,
Right.
I think we all got to let's step back and tap the brakes a little bit when you have an opponent like this. And, you have an inter-squad scrimmage. It's going to be more competitive, obviously, than this type of contest. But, yeah, I just have always had mixed feelings on Peyton Thorne. I feel like he's a quality guy, a serviceable guy. I don't know if I ever have felt like he's overly dynamic. He was a quarterback of that Michigan State team that had gotten up to number 2 in the country. I actually had the game where Purdue beat them on that day. So clearly there's some winning quality traits, but I just think there's a comfort level that wasn't there a year ago. It didn't really feel like to me a year ago that he was the guy that you would target in the portal and say, okay, let's go get that guy for this offense. And maybe, considering the approach they took at the quarterback spot in this last portal cycle, they feel like he's taking the next step and that they didn't need to go out and do another one. You bring in Walker White in the recruiting ranks, Holden Garner's still there. So listen, I want to reserve judgment until I see them against anybody that's any good.
Yeah. Well, truthfully, you could say that about Alabama, though Western Kentucky is considered considered to be a favorite for CUSA. They got some work to do. Alabama A&M, obviously, around the SEC. I mean, Texas beat Colorado State 52-0. Ole Miss beat Furman 76-0. I remember when Furman used to be able to play teams close. Chattanooga has been a playoff team recently. Tennessee beat them 69-3. I would tell you this is probably an indicator about the portal, right? I mean, Furman and Chattanooga and Western Kentucky, they've had moments in the past where they've been pretty darn good football teams, but all of a sudden in the portal, if you start losing 3 or 4 of your best guys every year going up in division to play at power schools, you're not going to be as competitive as you used to. I mean, Furman used to be a tough out.
So interesting you say that, because I had Western Carolina at NC State on Thursday night, which was a dogfight.
It was.
Okay. Now, but Western Carolina loses their offensive coordinator, Kay Bell, to Pittsburgh under Pat Narduzzi, and he takes 3 players from Western Carolina to Pitt, 2 receivers and a running back, and the running back lit up Kent State this past weekend on Saturday. And so you're right. You identify guys at the FCS level, you develop them, you bring them along, and then poof, they're gone, right? Well, you don't just replace that guy.
Right.
Not at that level. And the same thing happens at the group of 5 level. You've done all of this work, and then a guy gets really, really good, and you're left holding the bag, and now he's off somewhere else, making plays. And really what the group of 5 and the FCS levels are now becoming are farm systems.
Yep.
Because kids develop at such distinctly different rates, and some guys at 17 are more like they're 15. Some guys at 18 are more like they're 22. Well, all of a sudden that kid that's 17, but he's really in the body of a 15-year-old, fast forward that guy 4 to 5 years later with 3 years of eligibility left, he's a farm system guy.
Love the Blue in the chat room says the 10-minute quarters for the second half was agreed to at halftime by both coaches. And really, I didn't have a problem with it. Probably should have been done a couple of other places around the SEC. For those great for those great receivers, Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, and the rest of them. Listen, I know Jeremiah Smith, God willing that he doesn't get injured at Ohio State, is going to be one of the all-freshman All-Americans. He may actually be an All-American. It could be a nice little battle in our own state between Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams. What do you think of this Coleman kid? He's got a nice frame. His first catch is a touchdown, and his Auburn career is off and running. Perry Thompson's going to be good too, but everybody came to see all this Cam Coleman talk.
So, we had Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, Ryan Williams, all in the Under Armour game last year together. Yeah, Ryan had reclassified to the 25 class or 24 class, excuse me. And but Jeremiah Smith is different. Jeremiah Smith is AJ Green and Julio Jones in one body.
Wow.
Cam at one point for us was our number one ranked overall receiver in the class, ahead of Jeremiah Smith. I think we ended up rating those two in the top 10 overall or top 12 overall, with Jeremiah Smith eventually getting the nod. But it was a really good wide receiver class last year. And there are going to be a bunch of those guys that are playing. I had to put together our preseason freshman All-America team, and there had to be 2 players at each position, which is not easy to do, as I'm sure you can imagine, with no crystal ball in front of me. But the receiver position was the easiest one to do in this year's class.
I will tell you, we have a lot to get to on this show. Still one more thing in this opening segment in our 2-segment show. Don't forget, though, Brandon Marcello and Ryan Brown follow us this morning with the middle 8 as they go from 8 a.m. and lead us up to a next round show that is also live today on Labor Day. And then later on after that, we have overtime with both coaches' news conferences. We'll chat that up later on today. And then from 1 to 2, Brock Hewitt and LT are in here live to do Unlock. So until 2 o'clock Central today, nonstop programming here on a Monday. That's being brought to you in part by our friends at Gutter Cap. It's that time of year again, right? I saw it on the golf course yesterday, having to move a few leaves off the greens there as I was 3-putting. So I was able to blame the leaves yesterday. You can keep your gutters clean as those leaves fall from the trees and keep them free-flowing. Call our friend Chris Stewart and Gutter Cap today, 205-823-2212. 823-2212. Gutter Cap is a patented metal cover system that fits over most gutters, allowing rainwater inside, but simply eliminating your gutter cleaning forever. It's what they do. Gutter Cap is A+ rated with our Better Business Bureau, and Chris is on the board of directors there at the Better Business Bureau, so that helps you out as well. Eliminating gutter cleaning for over 2 decades. It's Gutter Cap, 205-823-2212. Or you can just go online to guttercapbirmingham.com, guttercapbirmingham.com. Luke's, when we come back, we talk about Vandy, we talk about Florida, we talk about Texas A&M, and we talk about maybe the biggest, most impressive win in the country. Could it have been Penn State? Was it USC? Was it Georgia? All that's coming up as we continue on Monday Morning Live with Tom Luginbill of ESPN right here on The Next Round.
Are you tired of buying your CPAP mask and supplies online only to be disappointed? It's time to visit CPAP Plus, your locally owned and operated CPAP shop that prides itself on personal service. Come see what you're buying at CPAP Plus with 3 convenient locations in Pelham, Highway 280, and now open in Trustful. Drop by for a free CPAP checkup and free filters, no appointment needed. Plus, sign up for their giveaway for a chance to win a free travel CPAP machine. Just Google CPAP Plus or visit any of those 3 locations. Stop by the New York Butcher Shop and pick up the finest in certified Angus prime beef steaks and burgers, premium pork chops, ribs, and all-natural chicken cut to order just for you. Their chef-prepared entrees and side dishes are the perfect dinner-to-go choice for your family and are ready to heat at home. With a great selection of fine wines and desserts, the New York Butcher Shop is your one-stop dinner shop. 2 locations to serve you, Cahaba Heights and on Highway 119 in Greystone. The New York Butcher Shop. Rare quality, well-done service.
Every day, someone is ridiculed and mocked for the clothing they chose to wear. It's a harsh reality we all must face. But you have the chance to change all of that with one visit to nextround.store. For just a few minutes of browsing, you will observe so many clothing options, from hats to hoodies to t-shirts. Please, for yourself or someone you love, go to nextround.store and embrace the warmth of true attire.
Hey, Lance Taylor from the Next Round to tell you about our friends at Gutter Cap. Gutter Cap's that patented aluminum cover system that fits over most existing gutters to keep out debris and eliminate that gutter cleaning. It's backed with a lifetime warranty, almost 20-year service record right here in Birmingham. Stay off that dangerous ladder forever. 45% off the retail price now if you call guttercapbirmingham.com. Call my good friend Chris Stewart now, 205-823-2212. Cap it, don't snap it. It's Gutter Cap. Hey, for all of your IT and printing needs, reach out to our friends at Xerox Business Solutions. Look, I'm still one of those old school guys. I print my notes every single day for the show. If you watch the show here on the Next Round, you see all the notes in front of me. From day one, Xerox Business Solutions, they've been with us here at the Next Round. Local for over 45 years. For all of your IT and printing needs, visit XeroxBusinessSolutions.com or call 205-969-3000. That's 205-969-3000.
Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The social media team at Next Round Live is dedicated to giving you daily news conferences and practice video from UAB, Alabama, Auburn, and around college football. Follow and compare to the sites you used to visit. You'll also get the latest highlights and news from the Next Round Daily Show. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. See more at nextroundlive.com.
Hey, Lance Taylor from the Next Round to tell you about one of our favorite places for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That is Hamburger Heaven since 1982. Hamburger Heaven has been serving Birmingham's best hamburgers, cheeseburgers, French fries, hand-spun milkshakes, and sandwiches made fresh to order. All of their ingredients are fresh and prepared daily. This includes their beef, always fresh, never frozen, hand-pattied each and every day. For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, visit any of the 4 locations, Highway 280, Irondale, Gardendale, and Homewood.
Every day, someone is ridiculed and mocked for the clothing they chose to wear. It's a harsh reality we all must face. But you have the chance to change all of that with one visit to nextround.store. For just a few minutes of browsing, you will observe so many clothing options, from hats to hoodies to t-shirts. Please, for yourself or someone you love, go to nextround.store and embrace the warmth of true attire.
This is Monday Morning Live with Tom Luginbill of ESPN in the other box over there. Jerry in the chat room. All this talk about Ohio State and Oregon, but to me, USC looked the most improved and sharp in week 1. That does make the Big Ten a little bit more interesting, Lugs, if USC and Penn State end up looking like they looked this weekend all season long.
Yeah, and if Iowa can capitalize on the back half of their game, in which the first half looked like Iowa last year, the second half, obviously they could cross the 50-yard line. But you're right. If the improvements we've seen from Penn State, which I thought they looked really, really sharp, hostile environment, long weather delay, everything working against them, I thought it was a no contest. They were just flat the better team. SC, I think I would agree with that sentiment, that coming off of the weekend, if you said, okay, who's the most improved team that your eyes told you, if you believe them, I think it would be SC. And Oregon, listen, I'm always cautious to make any type of snap judgments after week 1 and even sometimes week 2, because I always go back to that 2014 season, Jim, where week 2, Virginia Tech goes up and throttles Ohio State, beats them up front. The next week, Virginia Tech comes home and loses to East Carolina at home. 15 weeks later, Ohio State's playing for a national championship on their third quarterback. So everybody that we've seen this weekend, good, bad, somewhere in the middle, is not who they're going to be 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks down the road. But initial impressions, I think, would lead you to believe that the best offseason hires is the defensive coordinator at USC and the offensive coordinator at Penn State.
Yeah, I don't know at Oregon how you beat Idaho, who's a really good FCS team since they dropped back there, 24-14. It was 17-14 with 9 minutes to go in that game. Yeah. And Dylan Gabriel was 41 of 49, 380 yards passing. You look at that stat line. If I just give you the stat line for Dylan Gabriel, you thought they'd beat him 66-3. It was 17-14 with 9 minutes to go. They were in jeopardy of losing to the Vandals right there in Austin. Crazy.
Yeah, there's no question.
Yeah.
And again, a little bit of a wake-up call probably. Press the reset button. You got away with it. I think that's the one thing. You get away with something like that. NC State did the same thing against Western Carolina on Thursday night. And so now you see what is Tennessee facing this coming weekend with NC State and Charlotte, right?
Yeah.
Which team shows up? Oregon shows up next week. Who are they? To me, that's going to be really, really fun to see which teams take the field.
Yeah, Tennessee, by the way, only a 6-point favorite in that game against NC State. So if you saw Tennessee play and you saw NC State play, you would think it would be a lot more. It's a 6-point game, so that's a good point there by the Lugs. Monday Morning Live with you here all the way up to the top of the hour, so hang in with us every Monday. We are here both on our audio and our video platforms, followed by Brandon Marcello and Ryan Brown with a middle 8 in a second, all brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag, promo code NEXTROUND. Promo code NEXTROUND. That gets you a deposit bonus there. Go check out mybookie.ag. Here is our TNR Coffee question of the day. Our TNR Coffee question of the day brought to you by our friends at Who is Coffee. Which new quarterback impressed you the most this weekend? I will tell you mine probably it rhymes with Blinko or Dinko or Miko or Tinko. I'm talking about Nico there at Tennessee. Dude, I thought this guy was going to be overhyped. I know it's Chattanooga, but Lugs, he looks the part already. I'm going to give his name a shot. Iamalavia. Oh, try it again. That was almost like a female body part. Say it again.
Iamaleava.
Yeah, Nico looked good, man. He looked the part. I know it's Chattanooga. We'll see more against NC State, but I thought he was as advertised.
Well, as advertised, saw a whiff of it last year, obviously in the bowl game. And at the end of the day, if you look at the last 15 to 20 years of offensive college football, this is the one scheme that has had the most plug-and-play success of any scheme in college football. One guy comes out of it, next guy goes in. One guy comes out of it, next guy goes in. I mean, Hendon Hooker was one of the most inconsistent up and down performers at quarterback in college football during his time at Virginia Tech. Comes into this offense, lights the world on fire, becomes a draft choice, right? The difference between Joe Milton, though, and Nico is Nico's not going to miss the wide open players. I think that from an accuracy standpoint, they have improved. They've gotten younger, but they have improved from an efficiency and accuracy standpoint, which I think is really is a positive sign. Listen, they're good, man. They got weapons. The offense is tried and true. The program has been rehabilitated. And, weekend quarterback impressions, I think Nico's certainly one of them. But I don't know if you can have the conversation without talking about Cam Ward, Drew Aller, Kyle McCord at Syracuse, Eli Holston at Pitt. All four of those guys lit it up. I was impressed with all of them. I really was.
Texas and Oklahoma in their new league. Texas comes in, beats a Colorado State team 52-0, never a contest. It was interesting to see two things with Texas with me. One was with the injury at running back, what would they have there? I think Jarrett Gibson will be perfectly fine. And then I wanted to see Isaiah Bond and the reworked wide receiver room. Bond coming from Bama, Matthew Golden coming from Houston. Our buddy Andy Staples called it the most impressive group of the weekend, according to Brandon in the chat room there. He loved what Texas looked like in that game. Again, it was only Colorado State. Better opponent than a lot of people in the top 25 face this weekend. They get Michigan next week. What's your thoughts on Sark's bunch?
Well, and don't forget about Silas Bolden, too, from Oregon State. Yeah. I think the thing that all of these guys, the common denominator of all of them is they were not unproven commodities when they came in. This was very intentional from Sark. He wanted to go get guys that had played, that had performed at a high level. that it performed at a program where there is a standard to achieve. And all of those guys, again, were proven commodities. So you come into this offense, you blend with the guys that they've already got there that are younger players at Texas. I totally agree with you. They're going to be fine at running back. To me, it's all about the front for them, continuing to protect Quinn Ewers and allow him to just get the ball into the hands of those guys, because that is a dangerous receiving core. Now, do they have a Jatavion Sanders? Probably not, right? So what do? If that's not who you are, but you were the last 2 years, this is where Sark and Lane and these guys are really, really good about building around what your strengths are in a given year, because they're not going to be the same each and every year. That's why when I hear the term system, just throw it out the window. Your system is what your personnel is, and that's what you have to adapt to.
Yep. Tom Luginbill is with us here on Monday Morning Live as we continue on. You see Tom on ESPN and on the ACC network all season long. That Notre Dame Texas A&M game didn't have a lot of offense. Everyone's making a case that Notre Dame basically punched their ticket to the playoffs, basically, if you look at their schedule with that win over Texas A&M. What do you think the future is for the Irish this year, and the future is for the Aggies? Because unlike the LSU USC game last night, where I thought both teams looked improved, I still have some questions about Connor Wegman and where Texas A&M is headed.
I felt like watching the Notre Dame Texas A&M game is that most games are lost, they're not won.
Right.
And A&M just simply made more errors than Notre Dame did. Now, it took Notre Dame a little while to get going, about three and a half quarters before Riley Leonard really set in. But if you're asking me what position did Notre Dame put themselves in, I mean, they're looking at they could lose 2 and be in. Now, will that happen? I don't know. What SC looked like last night strengthens their schedule, which was a schedule going into the season outside of this A&M game, was the most friendly Notre Dame schedule I've seen in a long, long time. Well, maybe now SC's changing that narrative a little bit. But with Notre Dame going forward, the whole key, in my opinion, and this could apply to Texas A&M as well, Riley Leonard's got to prove that he can be accountable each and every week to be on the field and be healthy. When he is, they're really good. That cost Duke probably each of the last 2 years at least 4 combined wins, and those were really, really good years because of him. So he's got to stay healthy. They'll continue to emerge and mature in the offensive line. I was really impressed with them at left tackle with a true freshman there after they lost their starting left tackle during camp. A&M just made mistakes. They looked sloppy. I thought they gave up way too many big plays, gash plays on the ground versus the run on defense, which surprised me. I didn't expect to see that. I thought that Connor Wigman was not as sharp with the football as I thought he would be. I said coming off of last year and really going into this year, and I feel strongly about it. I think he's really talented. I think he has every chance to be what we're starting to see Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier becoming, but he's got to take better care of the football. I think that was the thing that stood out to me most in that matchup.
Bob, in the chat room, mybookie.ag chat room, Kyle Field is such a tough place to win at that Texas A&M can't even win there. It's a great point, Bob, right there. Keep the chat room buzzing here all morning long. Again, we're live on our platforms all the way until 2 o'clock Central today with all of our Monday shows. So Texas A&M gets beat in a high-profile game. LSU gets beat in a high-profile game. And then Florida gets embarrassed in a high-profile game, 41-17. So bad that the Miami players were talking to the Florida recruits as they were leaving the field, saying they own the state of Florida. Don't bother coming here to Gainesville. It's a $26 million buyout. I still believe Billy Napier could get the job done. I just don't know if they'll give him time to do it. That was a beatdown, and it starts with the fact that Cam Ward looked dang comfortable running Miami's team.
He almost looks too relaxed, Jim.
He does.
Like there's some times where I'm like, all right, man, it's not that easy, but at times he made it look that easy. I don't know, Jim. Did you see the Athletic trivia question on that game?
Was it about Miami's quarterbacks?
Yeah. So the question was, and this kind of sums up Miami's program. How many quarterbacks from Miami have been drafted in the first 3 rounds since 1990? The answer was 0.
Wow.
0. Well, we all know if you got a quarterback, you got a chance. If you don't, it does not matter, right? You might be able to be pretty good because you got other athletes and this and that. But if you want to compete for a championship and consistently win, you're not doing it without a quarterback. Well, they got one. And they got a bunch of other dudes around him too. I mean, that was one of the few times we saw, because going back to last year, Miami was one of the most heavily penalized, sloppy, undisciplined teams. And what it did is it detracted from the actual athletes and players that they've got. So whatever the offseason motive was, to light a fire under those guys to play clean football, and guess what will happen considering the athletes that we have? You had the quarterback, you had Damian Martinez. I mean, even with Ruben Bain being dinged up, I was really impressed with how clean they looked.
Yep. Roback.com, promo code TNR20. Roback.com. I got my Roback shirt on this morning. A lot of golfing gear, team gear now, Auburn and Alabama gear. Use our promo code, get 20% off. Roback.com, Roback.com. My apologies to Tyler and Lunsford and Melton, the Meltdown crew. We do go live until 3 o'clock today. They're on Disrupt the Media platform over there. The Meltdown is live every day at 2 o'clock. I was really in my head talking about all the new programming today, but I want to get that right.
We're the only ones working, Jim.
Yeah, we're live.
It is called Labor Day, right?
That's right. We're all working live until 3 o'clock today.
Go.
So Tyler, thanks for reminding me of that. So you got the number one team in the country playing Clemson, a couple of dynasties or mini dynasties, and then it becomes a 6-0 first half game, and you think, okay, Dabo's got his team playing tough. This is going to get interesting. And then it's a buzzsaw in the second half. Georgia, number one in the country, 34-3. And, Stuart Mandel says Dabo's dynasty is over. Grace Rayner, who's covered Clemson for years and now with The Athletic, also writing about the end of the mini dynasty there at Clemson. Listen, Georgia's just good, and I think it took them a while to figure out, what Carson Beck had to throw to. Once they did in the second half, they picked Clemson apart. What did you think of that big showdown in Atlanta?
Well, first and foremost, Clemson is damn good on defense. But I don't care who you are against a team like that. If you're on the field all the time, it is going to eventually take its toll. That defensive front four and the linebacking crew with Barrett Carter, they just flat got worn out. And I get it, because the offense has no ability to create explosive plays and has not been able to sustain productive drives to keep the defense on the sideline and allow the clock to work in their favor. I thought it was two really talented football teams in that first half. Thought Clemson shot themselves in the foot a little bit on offense at times, particularly on two drives that could have been extended, and they end up getting a penalty on both of them and forcing a turnover on downs. I've got Clemson this week. And of all teams they got on the schedule, they schedule App State.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that and going, you got to be kidding me. So here's the deal. And I, in fairness, I got to really peel back the layers on the tape starting this morning. But from a treetop level observation of that game, their problem is that Cade Klubnik, in my opinion, is always late. He's always a half second late. And I don't see the anticipatory traits, the decisiveness to just let it rip, cut it loose. There's always some level, in my opinion, of maybe not quite sure what he's seeing, little bit hesitant. And then what ends up happening is you have a guy that's got to step on somebody, or you've got somebody with some separation. And by the time the ball gets there, the guy's covered. And that was the difference, in my opinion, between the two quarterbacks on Saturday. Carson Beck gets back, gets set, knows exactly we're going bing, 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 ball out, or ball's out right now, and he's throwing to a spot. He's throwing guys open. He's anticipating and trusting where they're going to be. And I feel like I don't see that with Cade Klubnik. And that was, again, surface level analysis, and I'll know a lot more about that 3 to 4 days from now. But that was the sense that I got offensively and really why this thing got away from Clemson in the second half.
Who Is Coffee brings you part of the show, the TNR Coffee Blend. You can buy that in our store, nextround.store, nextround.store. They're with us every Monday morning to wake us up on Monday Morning Live. TNR Coffee from our friends at Who Is Coffee. Just go to nextround.store, nextround.store. Order yours today and set up a delivery system. And mybookie.ag, promo code NEXTROUND, bringing you all of our extra programming this college football season. I want to look ahead in the final 5 minutes of the show, but I got 40 seconds to give love to Vandy. 34-27 in overtime over Virginia Tech. Lugs, what impressed me here is they built the lead, they lost the lead, but they came back and won the game. A lot of underdogs like that build a lead, lose the lead, and fall apart. That didn't happen.
Didn't happen, and they got a quarterback, man. And I'm sitting there looking at this game. I'm watching on the side. I'm like, son of a gun, that's Jerry Kill.
Yeah, yes.
And if you want to know how much of a winner Jerry Kill is, just go Google his coaching history, everywhere he's been and everything he's done. And he's the head coach of Mexico State. They bring over Diego Pavia, and Jerry Kill's there on the sideline with that influence. Clark Lee deserves a ton of credit. They rushed the ball 48 times. And Kyron Drones rushed the ball 16 times for 19 yards. Diego Pavia had 104 yards on the ground. Virginia Tech couldn't defend quarterback run.
Yeah.
And they were sloppy, and they did not look like they were prepared. I think they believe in a little of their offseason hype, Jim.
Yep. They brought those guys and the offensive coordinator in Tim Beck, so they were all in on that group that I believe now is 2-0 as in an SEC stadium. Auburn last year, and now Vandy this year. Okay, looking ahead in our final 5 minutes here, Lugs, as we go until 7:56, a quick break, and then Brandon Marcello and Ryan Brown with the middle eight jump in here live. Alabama and Auburn, they get a little improvement in competition. Last year, both wins for Auburn and Alabama on the away sites here, but Auburn and Cal was a low-scoring, at times sloppy affair. Alabama's win at USF, low-scoring, at times a sloppy affair. Let's go Auburn first. What do you think of Auburn hosting Cal this weekend? What does Cal bring to town? Does Auburn it's good to see a little more competition this weekend, right?
Yeah, and I think Cal's actually an underrated football team. They've got two quarterbacks in Fernando Mendoza and Chandler Rogers. Jaden Ott is maybe the best running back in the country that you don't know about. My whole entire outlook on this game is can Cal handle Jordan Hare Stadium?
Right.
There's just not many places you play out west that are like that place. And so communication is going to be key. Pre-snap penalties will be key. But Justin Wilcox will be a well-coached football team in there.
Jordan Hare for Cal this week. USF comes in, and everyone sort of says they were looking to Wisconsin, but if USF gives Alabama any problems, it's 31, 31.5, 32 at mybookie.ag, moving around a little bit. What do you want to see for Alabama in this game before they make the trip to Wisconsin?
Well, if they've paid any attention to watching USF last year, they'll have their attention because that's a pretty sound football team that's got athletes. It has a dynamic quarterback. They would worry me. So I think the good news is if you're Alabama, that team gets your attention a heck of a lot more than Western Kentucky did. And look what they did to the Hilltoppers. I wouldn't be surprised if because of the offensive prowess, it's the same scheme coming out of Josh Heupel in Tennessee, that they move the ball a little bit, make some plays on Alabama. But Alabama, I think, will outlast them and wear them down. Okay,
Texas at Michigan. Texas looked good. Now they get to flex it against a better defense. My bookie playing it right at 5-6 points as it moves throughout the week. Texas a favorite on the road at Michigan, who struggled at times with Fresno State.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. And Fresno State's a pretty decent, solid group of five ball club that, is going to give you some problems. But I think Michigan, obviously everybody's worried about Davis Warren. I get it. A walk-on comes in and beats out everybody else, and you're sitting there going, isn't this Michigan? Were they just playing with J.J. McCarthy? And so I think that's the question is how good will Michigan's quarterbacks play against Texas on defense? Not necessarily the other round. Yes, it's an uptick for Texas seeing what Michigan brings to the table. But I think Texas has seen enough of that to know that they'll have their hands full. They'll be prepared for it. But can Davis Warren and Alex Orji and crew come up with a way to effectively move the football? Because that's the one home environment, in my opinion, in college football that is highly overrated during the day.
Michael says Wisconsin did not look too good. He's starting to look ahead, thinking Alabama can get past them. Caden Proctor's injury will be interesting.
Yep.
You guys keep asking about that. Sling on the sidelines, you all saw that. Nothing extra to tell you. Hopefully we learn more from Kalen DeBoer in his news conference coming up. Give me a 30-second answer on Tennessee and NC State prime time coming up. You see a lot of NC State. You've seen them once already, and now Tennessee comes in a touchdown favorite.
I'd really be surprised if NC State comes out and plays the way that they did against Western Carolina. I would be really, really surprised. You know, NC State's got 7 graduates in their offensive line room, and 4 of them start. Grayson McCall's been a 3-time conference player of the year in the Sun Belt. Showed real flashes the other night, and then also showed some boneheaded, head-scratching plays. But he's a dynamic runner, too, so now Tennessee's got to contend with that. The fact that this game's not in Knoxville, I think, favors NC State. I'm not ready to say that NC State's the better team. I don't believe that just yet. But they're old and they're experienced. They've got potentially 2 first-rounders at corner. Davin Vann is a difference maker as a pass rusher. So I would expect Tennessee to have to execute really well on offense to consistently move the football because, again, NC State's very, very experienced, but I think Tennessee's probably the better team.
That's Monday Morning Live today with the Middle Eights coming up with Brandon Marcello and Ryan Brown. You can always watch these on replay, just like all of our shows here. I hope everyone goes out and has a Ashton Genty kind of Monday, Labor Day. We'll see you next Monday, Luke. So long, man. Middle Eights up next.